Hey guys, good afternoon. I hope you guys had a great week. I'm going to be giving you a quick overview on week 3. We have been focusing on especially the considerations of the design of the HR information system as well as the cycle, the systems development life cycle for an HRS. So this week we're going to focus on systems design and the acquisition of the systems. And we're going to combine this conversation as well with the cost justification for an HRS system. So I just want to remind you that this particular week and the paper that you're going to write is going to be at 10% of the value of your grade, plus in addition the considerations related to your online participation. So with that said, let me just start the topic. So we review the SDLC this past week. So right now you have an understanding of both the planning and the analysis phase. So we're going to concentrate on the design, which is basically the detailed specifications of the final system. And we're also going to talk about the costs related to it. You have reviewed the SDLC model, but in more detail, design can have two different types of approaches. The first approach is a logical design. So when you're designing a system, you can start by looking into the business requirements, and that is what we use to translate this into improved business processes. This is regardless of any technology implementation. So in essence, one of the design considerations is that you first look into the organizational processes. You don't look into the systems because that can be pretty ambiguous to try to get into a result without actually looking into what is the business needs. And remember that as you move forward to create your business case, you really need to have a really good understanding on what is the problem that you're trying to solve. So using a logical approach allows the organization or whoever is designing the system to really have a good foundation on what the business processes are and what is it that you're trying to solve for, right? Now, when you enter the physical design, you're really focusing in translating the business processes into a physical system. So 2 stages for the most part. First, you understand the business process, and then you focus on how do you use the software and the hardware to solve for the needs of improving a process. So those are the 2 things that the 2 ways to look into into the design. One focusing in business processes, the second one in hardware. And one of the things that you're going to do through your paper is to really analyze why do we care about this. And I think you should really be looking into the specific rationale behind that, as I mentioned, to really drive good outputs of your implementation. Now, when you're doing the logical design, like I said, you're focusing on the processes, but there is 2 ways to look into it. One is you look at it from the data perspective. So in other words, you do an analysis of what data the organization is capturing and how it is being used. And you are also doing an analysis on the relationship of the data. But at that particular moment, you're ignoring how or where the data is being used by the organization. You don't care what department, what organization, you just care about really capturing what is it and how it is being used. You could record for your own purposes which department, but it's not the central focus of the understanding of the data perspective. Then it is the process perspective, which is really you are focusing on the business process and the activities on how the organization engages and how the data flows through the HR system. So in other words, let's just say that we have a planning process. And for that planning process, business planning process, you need headcount data. You need cost data, you need benefits cost data, etc. So the process is really the business planning process. It's not necessarily an HR process, but it is a business process. So you're analyzing how the data flows through the HR system to support a business need. So those are the two ways to actually look at the logical design. For the physical design, there is some other activities that you also have to engage. First, you have to determine if there is a need of a system, right? So once you have done some preliminary analysis, then you have to really engage in the conversation of, do we need a system? And if so, then start focusing on an annual implementation plan. So the first thing is, do we need to, what are the hardware and software requirements? And then what alternatives do we have? In other words, do we have, if we have a need of a system, do we have a internal resources, or do we have external software resources that we have to look into? And what are those requirements? The third thing is where to buy it, right? Maybe you have to do a in-house implementation, in-house development, which sometimes is a good solution depending on your need. Or you have to go through a commercial option, right? So, and sometimes it's a combination of both. Then the third question is, the fourth question is, who do you select? How do you select a vendor? I'm sorry, how do you implement this, right? And what will be a good schedule? So to do that, then you start working with potential vendors to understand what are those things that are important to the system, and they have a different ways of actually showing you why they are the best selection for you. So the vendor selection is actually a key activity within the design, right? Because by the time you go to present your plan, you basically go with, we have talked to Workday, we have talked to SAP, we have talked to Oracle, and this is what came out of the reviews, and here's how we came out with the results of selecting this vendor. And so to do that, you have to actually get into what's the functionality of the system, and then how is the RT architecture integration, how difficult is it going to be, and what's the integration overall, not just from the architecture perspective, but also from the full IT organization right now, how it will be part of the larger systems within the organization. Remember that the HRIS is the system within a larger system, which is the organizational system. So there's a lot of areas to consider as you're going through selecting the particular IT architecture. Obviously, the price, you have to look into the price, what is going to give you more advantages. And I think the vendor is also one to consider, because the vendor is going to become really your partner. And as you continue to evolve in upgrades in your system, as you guys know, there's always going to be this phase of continuous improvement. It's going to be your family. It's going to be part of who you are as an organization. So you should really be very thoughtful about the longevity and the viability of the vendor. Are these vendors that actually have a brand? And are they sustainable vendors? In other words, are they going to be there for the long run with you? But also the last thing is the system feasibility. One thing is the technical aspects. What do we need actually for the systems to function on the technical side? And then operational, and how well the system fits with the current organization environment. And are they going to accept this new system, right? Here's some steps to the selection, but I'm not going to get into the detail because some of these things you already know, so you're just going to write about it. But what I'm going to focus on is really that to select the system, there is a big step that you have to focus on, which is the cost-benefit analysis, because this is central to the decision. So a cost-benefit analysis is a comparison of the projected costs and the benefits associated with investment. So there is a formula to do the cost-benefit ratio, which is the benefits of the project divided by the cost of implementation. The cost is any cash required for the initial purchase implementation, or ongoing maintenance of the system investment. And then, the benefits are any financial gain resulting from the investment, as well as, some cost reductions that you may have. So there is some ways to get through it, and this is why it's important that you guys look into this. So there is some the strategies that you can follow to actually present this particular part of your project to the organization. One is the cost of not doing it, right? What's the risk avoidance? You can, if you don't do this, or by doing this, you're mitigating the future risk in the organization from the legal perspective. And normally it doesn't require an extensive analysis justification. It's just what it is, right? And then there is the other aspect, which is enhancements to the organization, improvement of the effectiveness of the firm, either by revenue growth, cost reduction. This part requires a much more deeper analysis. So these strategies both should be addressed when you're presenting your project to the organization. Here's some guidelines that I will advise for you guys to look into when you're looking into improving, I guess, your cost benefit analysis. So one of the things that I really like about this is that this particular bullets is the last one, which is develop the best estimate possible. And I think, this is more related to the reality of implementing a system is that sometimes it's very optimistic, and sometimes people have an approach that is very conservative. So I think there is always caveats to the implementation. I think you should be as realistic as possible in your presentation, and that comes out of the dialogue between the different teams. But for the most part, is one of the areas that people tend to, I guess, struggle with once you're going through this process of doing the cost benefit analysis. And I think the at the end of the day, you have to really focus on the functionality, not the products. And one thing is really focus on the benefits, not the cost, because benefits, like I said, is there is a benefit of doing this, and then there is a cost of not doing it, right? So I think it's an interesting conversation as you are analyzing this in your paper, right? Why is it that we care about these particular topics, to focus on the benefits first and then examining the cost. The business, obviously, you have to understand the business needs and where the opportunities are. And one thing that happens, and this is just a comment on my side, is that sometimes we get married with a particular software and it's very hard. So we have to be unbiased about making the decision, because that may have a lot of impact on what we do. So anyway, this is just a summary of some of the guidelines that you will look into, and hopefully you can comment on this. There is a very hard part of the cost benefits analysis, which is the sources of the cost and the benefits, which is something that is very hard to do, but is something that is necessary to do. And the second step is that once you have the sources, you need to estimate the dollar value for each one of the benefits. And you also need to understand what's the time when the organization will incur in each additional cost, and when you're going to have the benefit, right? So this exercise of cost benefit requires a lot of interaction with the IT department as well as with the finance organization, because at the end of the day, HR can only provide this specific data if they have the support of their finance organization and the IT organization. So this is one of the difficult parts, right? It's very tough, but it's something that is necessary to do as you're doing the cost analysis. This slide actually illustrates just the types of benefits. There are direct benefits and indirect benefits, but also the cost impact that is direct cost, but also indirect cost. So you can see that from the benefits perspective, there is a revenue enhancement potential. We don't know. I mean, I'm just giving you an example, but it may be that you're selling actually training, right? So if it is training that you're selling and you're going to be implementing a solution to deploy, I guess, web training, then the net revenue is going to have an impact. But then there is also some other aspects of improvement, the improvement of the I guess the decision making in some other items, like how much people we have been used to sell specific products versus what we have today. So there is some soft benefits that you may think about. On the cost reduction side, there may be benefits of costs that were, in the past, maybe if we follow the example of the training, maybe you're not going to need many people traveling to these different places because the solution is going to deliver the training online, and you may have some people working still but not necessarily traveling, or you're not going to have as many vendors helping you to provide the solutions to your customers. These are some of the things that you can just use as a justification for the benefits. For the new implementation costs, you can see that there is a direct impact in the organization. That may be the investment on software, service agreements, which is all out of the pocket cost. But then there's some other indirect costs that may be related to technical support. We may need people that are specialists on the new system, etc. So there's some areas that you need to consider as far as what's going to be required. Change management costs, as an example. When you're doing the implementation, you're going to need change management or project managers that will help you to drive the implementation. So there is also an area in the book that you're going to find the 3 different methods to estimate indirect benefits. There is a direct estimation, the benchmarking, and the internal assessment. And each method has its own advantages and its limitations. You can read some of the aspects of each one of them, which, the key differences is that the direct estimation is data that you have in your organization. It relies on the expertise of people internally. And benchmarking is actually data that you get from people that have the experience in implementing systems, like the Hackett Group, Saratoga, and other IT partners that may offer some benchmarking data. And then there is another internal assessment, which is using the internal data, actual costs, which also requires historic data that can be used in combination of the benchmarking. So each method has its own advantages and its limitations. So take a look into it in the book, and I'm sure you're going to find a little bit more of information on this. Now, with that said, there's some critical considerations that are more contemporary. So I have listed some of them that may help you as well as you continue your learning on this particular, I guess, chapters. But strategically, here are some of the things that you should consider and should address in your business cases. What are you really trying to achieve strategically? Make sure that you're tying all this particular implementation to the corporate goals, the grow HR processes, and tech that scale. Make HR a much more easy to do business with organization. Take the friction out of the HR processes. Create a greater brand from the employee perspective. So there's strategic aspects of the implementation that you should not miss, right? There is companies like Cisco, there's companies like Intel, companies like DXCS that are really focusing in changing the branding of their companies. And they do that by connecting with the different technologies to their employees and making sure that they're in constant communication through the technology with their employee workforce. So a much more modern technology where employees can actually easily communicate goes the extra step in creating employee engagement. So there's a lot of things that you should not lose sight of when you are running an implementation from the strategic perspective. So, and my final point is going to be that at the end of the day, you have to think strategically. What is your business case? The selling points, for the most part, are very hard to build. So it's very hard to build a business case around effectiveness. So you have to really understand what are those new efficiencies. What is it that you're doing from the regulatory compliance? What parts of your implementation are enhancing the competitiveness of the company? And what are those necessary capabilities? So what different types of research has shown is that 40% of the implementing a system is just necessary capabilities, and then 30% really focuses on enhanced competitiveness. So I guess my point is that you have to be fair with what you're selling. Don't forget to sell your strategic changes, right? What is it that is going to drive as a change? I'll give you some examples. When I implemented systems in Cisco, where systems didn't have a way for employees to look into their bonus, or the managers didn't have a way to look into how is my employee engagement level today, or on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis. So you have to really build the strategic aspects of having a particular solution built within your system. So don't lose sight of this, because this is a big part of really being able to design the system, but also at the same time strategically sell this to the organization. Finally, the next steps, again, the reading is the chapter 5 and 8, and we have to oh, sorry, I have a mistake here. So you have to focus on these chapters. So read the chapters, but then write a paper that provides a detailed examination of the critical issues when designing the HR system, acquiring the systems, but also the cost justification. So it should be 5 to 7 pages. I really want you guys to focus on critically analyzing this 2 chapters and come up with your assessment of this particular topics, and make sure that you're not just copying from the book, but you're actually driving some sort of critical thinking, critical analytical thoughts on this particular chapter. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm really looking forward to read the next papers as well. And the questions will be posted most likely on the Saturday evening. So you can expect the discussion to start then. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great week.